"Sit down, Margaret, you're confused again." Those were the first words my daughter said to me the morning everything shattered, and I still remember how her voice sliced through the quiet kitchen, sharp enough to make the coffee tremble in my cup. Then came the second sentence, the one that still rings in my bones. "You signed the papers already, don't you remember?" I froze. Signed what? I hadn't signed anything. My hands shook so hard I had to set my mug down. "Kathy," I whispered, "I didn't sign a thing." She smiled, that tight, patronizing smile people give the elderly when they have already decided we are useless. "Mom, please, you're 72. You forget things. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. And 2 hours later, at church, they called me senile to my face. For half a second, old and tired and worn from grief, I believed them. But something deep and stubborn inside me rose up and whispered, "Not this time, Margaret, not today." Maybe that is why I opened the prayer book. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe God was tired of watching quietly. But there in the second pew of Maple Grove Baptist, where I had sat for 50 years, where they used to respect my casseroles and call me Sister Whitaker, I flipped to the page where they wrote names for special prayers, birthdays, and the sick, and I froze. Written in clean blue ink, in handwriting that looked disturbingly like mine, was my own name. Pray for Margaret Whitaker, declining mental health, early dementia, guardianship needed for her safety. Decision by Friday. Friday guardianship, my name, my handwriting, a fate already chosen. The lights flickered above me, my breath went thin, and as I traced those letters with my finger, I swear, I felt the ghost of my daughter's hand guiding mine, forcing strokes, forging my future. I whispered, "They think I'm slipping. They want me gone." I was not slipping. Not yet. Not enough to miss the truth dripping from those pages like poison. The betrayal had not begun that day. It had been growing quietly for years, like mold in corners I did not want to inspect. When Harold died 13 years before, I thought grief would pull us closer. I paid the $25,000 for the funeral myself, sold his tools, put his workbench away, and let Kathy move back home rent-free because she said single mothers needed support. I gave her the master bedroom Harold and I had shared for 42 years and took the guest room like a guest in my own life. I raised her boys every weekend so she could work. And only later did I learn that half those shifts were nights out with her girlfriend. When my son died in that terrible accident, I clung to Kathy as if she were all I had left. Love blinds the lonely, and grief blinds the desperate. Little phrases started appearing, slipping in like smoke. "Mom, you can't live alone anymore. Mom, you lost your purse again. Mom, you repeated yourself 3 times today." Maybe I had, maybe I hadn't, but doubt settles into an old brain like fog. Even so, the moment I saw my name in that prayer book, I knew someone was rewriting my story, one quiet lie at a time. When service ended, I slipped out the back. I heard Kathy calling, "Mom, wait," but I kept walking, my legs moving faster than they had in years. At home she burst in, breathless. "Why'd you leave like that?" I stared at her. "Why is my name in the prayer book?" Her eyes flickered. "What? Don't lie, Kathy. It says I have dementia. It says I need guardianship. It says there is a decision by Friday." Her face softened into that dangerous pity. "Mom, you must have misread it." There it was, gaslighting wrapped in sugar. "I know my own name," I said. Her jaw tightened. "Mom, you really should rest." She reached for the phone. "I think it's time we talked to Dr. Haver. You're getting worse." My heart pounded. "Kathy, what are you doing?" "Protecting you." That phrase would haunt me. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those forged words in the prayer book. Friday. I had 4 days before I could be turned into a legal child, stripped of everything. I wondered if I was paranoid. I wondered if I really was losing my mind. Then I heard a soft metallic click from the hallway. It came from my bedroom, my locked bedroom. I crept down the hallway, my heart thudding, and put my ear to the door. Kathy's voice hissed from inside, low and sharp, alongside her wife's. "I told you, she's not signing anything willingly." "Then forge the rest," her wife snapped. "We don't have time." The lawyer said Friday. "It has to look final." Something in me cracked. The old Margaret, the one who baked pies and apologized when someone bumped into her, died in that hallway. I went to the closet and found Harold's old digital recorder, the one he had used to note measurements in his workshop. I switched it on, slid it under the door, and stepped back. Their whispers became evidence. Evidence became my weapon. In the morning, Kathy acted like nothing had happened. She made eggs, smiled, asked about a game show. "Mom," she said sweetly, "I need your ID for your doctor's appointment." "No." Her smile fell. "Mom, if you don't cooperate, the court will think you are refusing care. They can assign a guardian without your consent." The worst part was knowing she might be right. This world is not built for old minds who complain that something is wrong. When she left for work, I picked up the recorder with shaking hands and listened. I heard every word, every plan to drug me, every mention of forged signatures and a Friday deadline. Fear burned away and turned to something else. Anger. I called the only person I could think of, Harold's old friend, Thomas Graham, a retired police officer who still sent Christmas cards. When he picked up and heard my voice shake, he did not tell me I was confused. He listened. "Margaret," he said when I finished, "do not let them see you panic. Stay home. I am coming over." When Thomas arrived, he carried a small case with a notebook, a recorder of his own, and a little USB camera, no bigger than a thumb. "This is motion activated," he explained. "We will place it in your bedroom. If they come back, we will have more than whispers." For the next 2 days, we became quiet detectives. We found loan statements in Kathy's name with huge balances and a $25,000 due date on Friday. We found drafts of guardianship forms in her drawer and a will I did not remember signing that gave her full control of my house and accounts. The camera caught the rest. On Thursday night, at 11:43, Kathy and her wife slipped into my room again. The camera recorded Kathy whispering, "We'll switch her meds tomorrow. He already thinks she's slipping. Once she's drowsy enough, we will get the last signatures." Friday, we file. I watched the footage with Thomas and felt my blood run cold. This was no clumsy overreach. This was a planned erasure of my life. Thomas shook his head slowly. "This is more than guardianship. This is fraud and attempted poisoning. We could have taken the footage straight to the police and let it unfold behind closed doors. But something in me wanted the truth exposed in the same place the lie had been planted. So, on Sunday, instead of sitting quietly in the second pew, I stood up when Pastor Williams asked if anyone had prayer requests. My hands trembled, but my voice did not. "I have something to say," I announced. The congregation turned. Kathy's face went pale. I held up the prayer book. "Someone wrote in here that I am losing my mind, that I need guardianship, that a decision will be made by Friday. That is a lie." Murmurs rippled through the sanctuary. I pulled a folded transcript from my purse and raised it with the shaking dignity of an old woman who had been pushed too far. "And here," I said, "are the words of the people who want to take my life from me." Thomas stepped forward from the back, introduced himself, and confirmed that we had video evidence. Kathy jumped up, shouting that I was confused, that I was being manipulated, that the devil was using my fear. Her wife tried to run for the door, but the church's automatic locks had already clicked. Panic erupted. By Friday, we were not in a guardianship hearing, but in a criminal courtroom. The judge sat stone-faced as he watched the footage of my daughter plotting to drug me, forge my signature, and take my home to pay off her debts. When it ended, he looked at me with eyes full of mixed sorrow and respect. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, "you are not the person in this room who needs supervision." Kathy was arrested. Her wife fled and was picked up months later. The forged documents, the false reports to doctors, the financial schemes, all of it unraveled. I walked out of that courthouse without a guardian, without a label of dementia, without anyone else's name on my life. I was free, but freedom after that kind of betrayal is not a simple joy. It is a quiet, shaky thing. That first night home on my own, I sank into Harold's old recliner and stared at the wall, not thinking about the victory, but about the little girl I once rocked to sleep, the one who used to bring me dandelions clutched in sticky hands. Where did I go wrong? I whispered. The silence did not answer. In my mind, I heard Harold's old, steady voice. "Maggie, if you let them step on you once, they'll do it again." He used to say that when neighbors never returned dishes, when people took advantage of my kindness, I thought of how far that lesson had stretched. The next day, Thomas came by with groceries. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Relieved, guilty, old," I said. He smiled gently. "You are old, but you are not guilty. Greed is not your sin." Grief still gnawed at me, so I went to Harold's grave, knelt down and brushed dirt from his name, and told him everything, apologizing to a stone for not seeing what our daughter had become. As I stood there, Pastor Williams appeared, the the same pastor who had read that prayer book every week without questioning its words. His face was tender. "You did not embarrass yourself," he said when I joked about my outburst. "You woke us up." He told me the church wanted to help, that some ladies wanted to visit, that I deserved care without knives hidden behind it. That line lodged in my heart. Care without knives. Slowly, life shifted. Mrs. Turner brought banana bread. Pastor checked in. Thomas changed my locks. My grandson, who had been caught between his mother and the truth, came to my porch one afternoon with tears already in his eyes. "Grandma, I did not know," he said. He hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "I should have seen. I am sorry." I stroked his hair. "You are here now. That is enough." We talked for hours. He told me how his mother still blamed me, how she claimed everyone had lied about her. Some people never feel remorse, I realized. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be for her. It would be for me. In the weeks that followed, I built small routines like scaffolding around a damaged house. I opened my curtains at 7, made coffee at 8, walked slowly past neighbor yards at 9. I dug through old boxes in the shed and found Harold's first wedding ring and a letter he had written, telling me to protect my name and mind, warning that people get greedy when they smell loneliness. I cried, then stood up a little straighter. At the community center, I started joining the senior groups I used to avoid. The knitting ladies welcomed me with peach cobbler and chatter that did not treat me like broken glass. I realized how starved I had been for simple company. As news of my case spread, other older folks began whispering their own stories. A social worker came once on a bogus report that I was unsafe alone, clearly triggered by someone on the outside pulling strings. But she walked through my tidy house, saw the labels on my medicines, watched me think clearly, and left full of apologies. My grandson visited more often. We planted herbs, watched films, and let quiet comfort replace the chaos Kathy had left behind. I began volunteering at the church pantry, handing out bags of food and discovering people who still remembered me as a teacher, as a neighbor, not as a case file. One day, a letter arrived from prison. It was from Kathy. She wrote that she had been drowning in debt, that she had seen my love as a resource to mine, that lying and manipulating had gotten easier each time she did it. She admitted she hated herself and said she deserved to be exactly where she was. She said she missed things, my voice, my hairbrush in her childhood, the version of herself who had not yet chosen greed. She did not ask for another chance, only said that if I never wrote back, she understood. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I whispered, "You were a good daughter once, but it does not erase what you became." Closure did not come from her pen. It came from inside me. In time, my own story turned outward. Old church ladies started asking me to speak to a cousin or a neighbor. People called me Miss Maggie the Advocate. I realized how many seniors were quietly being used, stolen from, threatened, and how rarely anyone believed them. When the county asked me to help launch an elder justice initiative, I almost said no. I was just an old woman who liked roses and peach tea. But the coordinator reminded me that I had turned trauma into movement, and that my lived experience had already changed how the local police and courts saw elder coercion. So I said yes. The group began small, then grew, and one afternoon 2 officers attended our meeting, asking to learn how to spot abuse. I told them about prayer books and forged signatures, about whispers in hallways, about how rarely anyone thinks to ask an old woman if she feels safe in her own home. They listened like my words mattered. The local paper wrote a story about how one grandmother's case was inspiring reform. Then, a larger paper picked it up. One morning Mrs. Turner ran over, waving the Savannah Chronicle, where a photo of me speaking at a seminar sat beneath the headline, "Survivor Transforms County." I pressed the newsprint to my chest and cried, not from sadness, but from something like redemption. My grandson called to say there was a writing contest called State Voices, and insisted I submit some of the pages I had been scribbling into my notebook, the one I titled, "What I Wish My Younger Self Knew." I wrote about boundaries, about not confusing love with control, about understanding that aging does not mean surrender. I won. They invited me to a gala to close the evening as a speaker. Standing on that stage in a soft blue dress with Harold's ring pinned to my chest, I looked at my wrinkled hands and thought of all they had carried. I told the crowd how being called senile in church had almost broken me, how seeing my name in forged handwriting had nearly made me doubt my own mind, how age had taught me that surviving is not enough, that we must rise. People cried, people applauded, and when we drove home under a sky full of stars, I whispered to myself that I had lived long enough to see my life returned to me. A week later, another letter came, this time from the State Office of Elder Rights and Advocacy. In recognition of my case and work, they were naming new legislation after me, the Whitaker Act, to strengthen protection against fraudulent guardianship and forged medical claims. The governor asked me to stand beside him as he signed it. On the courthouse lawn, with cameras flashing and a crowd of seniors and advocates holding signs that said, "Protect our elders," I listened as he thanked me for my courage. At the microphone I said that when my daughter forged my name in a prayer book, I thought my life was ending. But that day on the lawn, I knew it had been the beginning of truth and justice. I said the law was not just for me, but for every elder who had been silenced or treated like a burden. The applause rolled over me like warm thunder. Afterward, Thomas drove me to the pier over the river. The sky glowed pink and gold, the water shimmering. "Thank you for staying," I told him, "for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." He squeezed my hand and said, "Love is not always loud, that sometimes it is patient and waits until we are ready." I looked at him and saw not a replacement for Harold, but a new chapter. "I do not know what happens next," I admitted. He smiled and slipped his fingers through mine. "Then we find out together." We watched the river, and I felt everything inside me settle. I had been betrayed. I had been nearly erased. I had been called senile and treated as worthless. But I had also gathered my courage, exposed the truth, built a community, changed laws, and found, in my 70s, that my life could still begin again. I survived. I rose. I lived again. And if you are listening to my story now, whether you are young or old, whether you are a child, a parent, a grandchild, or an elder like me, I want you to remember this. You are not weak. You are not invisible. You are not crazy for noticing what others do not want to see. Check on the elders around you. Believe them when they whisper that something is wrong. And if you are the one being dismissed or gaslit, hold on to your truth like a lifeline. Speak it. Fight for it. Write it down. Because sometimes the very story they use to silence you becomes the law that protects others. Family is who protects your soul, not who shares your blood. And survival is not the final chapter. It is the first page of the life you choose for yourself.